I stood in the corner of my parents' backyard, watching them raise their glasses to toast my brother Derek. 32 years of being invisible, and nothing had changed. The smell of grilled burgers filled the air. Laughter echoed around me, but I felt like a ghost at my own family gathering. My eyes drifted to Aunt Patricia across the yard. She was watching me with a strange expression, like she was holding something back. I did not know it then, but everything was about to change forever. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you have not already. Now let me take you back to where it all began so you can understand why that moment at the barbecue meant everything to me. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business. Our house sat on a quiet street lined with oak trees, and from the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. But inside those walls, there were two very different realities, depending on which son you were talking about. My brother Derek was 3 years older than me, and from the moment I can remember, he was the sun that my parents orbited around. He was tall, athletic, with the kind of easy smile that made teachers forgive his late homework and coaches overlook his attitude. By high school, he was the starting quarterback, and every Friday night, our whole town cheered his name under the stadium lights. Then there was me. I was smaller, quieter, the kind of kid who preferred books to balls and computers to crowds. While Derek filled trophy cases, I filled notebooks with code and ideas that nobody in my family cared to understand. The differences in how we were treated were not subtle. Derek had the big bedroom upstairs with windows overlooking the backyard. I slept in a converted room in the basement where the only window was a small rectangle near the ceiling that let in just enough light to remind me what I was missing. The walls of our house were covered with photos of Derek. Derek scoring touchdowns. Derek at prom. Derek holding up his acceptance letter to college. If you looked hard enough, you might find a few pictures of me tucked away in old albums, but you would have to search for them. Every single one of Derek's football games was a family event. My parents would wear his jersey number, paint their faces, scream themselves hoarse from the bleachers. When I won first place at the regional science fair, I stood on that stage alone, scanning the audience for familiar faces that never appeared. When I asked my mother why they did not come, she said they forgot. They forgot. Birthdays told the same story. Derek's birthdays were legendary in our neighborhood. Catered food, rented bounce houses, dozens of guests celebrating the golden child. My birthdays were quiet dinners at home, a store-bought cake, and a card signed by parents who seemed relieved when the obligation was over. For a long time, I did not resent any of this. Children normalize whatever reality they grow up in, and I simply believed that Derek deserved more attention because he was more worthy of it. I tried harder in school, thinking that if I just achieved enough, my parents would finally see me too. But every report card I brought home was met with a distracted nod before the conversation shifted back to Derek's latest game, or Derek's weekend plans, or Derek's future. The moment I truly understood my place in this family came when I was 16 years old. I had just received the news that I had won a full scholarship to an elite computer science summer program. It was one of the most competitive programs in the country, and out of thousands of applicants, I was one of 50 selected. I could barely contain my excitement as I sat down at the dinner table that night. I waited for a pause in the conversation and announced my news. My mother looked up from her plate, gave me a brief smile, and said, "That is nice, honey." Then, without missing a beat, she turned to Derek and asked about his plans for the upcoming weekend. My father did not even look up from his food. Derek smirked at me across the table and said, "Nerd camp sounds boring." Nobody asked a single follow-up question. Nobody wanted to know more about the program, how I had applied, what it meant for my future. In the span of 30 seconds, the biggest achievement of my young life was dismissed and forgotten. That night, I sat alone in my basement room with the lights off. Something fundamental shifted inside me. I realized that no matter what I accomplished, I would never be enough for them. I would never be Derek. And for the first time, I decided to stop trying to earn their approval. From that moment on, everything I did would be for myself. A few days later, Aunt Patricia came to visit. She was my mother's younger sister, never married, working as an accountant in Columbus. Unlike the rest of my family, Aunt Patricia always remembered my birthday, always asked about my projects, always looked at me like I actually existed. She found me sitting alone on the back porch that evening, staring at nothing. Without a word, she sat down beside me. We stayed in silence for a long while before she finally spoke. "I see you, Joe," she said quietly. "I have always seen you, and one day they will too. But by then, you will not need their approval anymore." I did not respond. I did not know what to say, but something in her words planted a seed that would grow for years to come. From that day forward, Aunt Patricia became my anchor, the one person in my family who I could trust completely. She was also, I would later learn, the keeper of a secret that would eventually change everything. After high school, Derek and I took very different paths, though you would never know it from how my parents talked about us. Derek graduated with barely passing grades, his academic career propped up by teachers who gave the star quarterback more chances than he deserved. But none of that mattered to my parents. They wrote a check for a private university with a price tag that made my eyes water, and off Derek went to continue being the center of attention somewhere new. College for Derek was 4 years of parties, tailgates, and girls. He changed his major 3 times, failed multiple classes, and stretched his education into 6 years. My parents covered every expense without complaint. The new car when his old one broke down. The off-campus apartment when he said the dorms were too cramped. The credit card bills that arrived like clockwork every month. Through it all, my parents beamed with pride about their son, the college man. When it was my turn, things were different. I had earned admission to a good university with a partial scholarship based on my academic record. The scholarship covered about half the cost. I sat down with my parents to discuss how we would handle the rest, assuming they would help me the way they had helped Derek. My father barely looked up from the television. "We already spent so much on Derek," he said. "You are smart. You will figure it out." My mother nodded in agreement. "Maybe you can get a job on campus. Lots of students work their way through school." I stared at them, waiting for the punchline, waiting for them to say they were joking. They were not joking. In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity that I was on my own. I worked 3 jobs throughout my 4 years of college. I served food in the dining hall at 6 in the morning, tutored students in computer science during the day, between my own classes, and stocked shelves at a grocery store until midnight. I slept 4 or 5 hours a night. I never went to parties. I never took spring break trips. Every dollar I earned went to tuition books and the cheapest food I could find. I graduated with honors in computer science. I had zero debt because I had refused to take out loans, refused to owe anyone anything. And when I walked across that stage to receive my diploma, I looked into the audience and saw 2 empty seats where my parents should have been. They had gone to Derek's graduation, of course, but mine fell on the same weekend as one of Derek's business ventures, some networking event he wanted them to attend, and they chose him. Again, 2 years after graduation, I was working at a mid-level tech company and saving every penny I could. I visited Aunt Patricia one weekend, and during our conversation, she mentioned something that stopped me cold. "Have you ever thought about using the money your grandmother left you?" she asked casually. I stared at her. "What money?" The color drained from her face as she realized she had revealed something I was never supposed to know. Slowly, reluctantly, she told me the truth. My grandmother Eleanor had passed away when I was 12 years old. She had always shown me extra affection, perhaps because she saw how my parents overlooked me. In her will, she had left me nearly $40,000 specifically for my college education. The money was to be held in trust by my parents until I was ready for school. But that money never reached me. My parents had used it to pay off Derek's credit card debts and to buy him his first car. They had taken an inheritance meant specifically for me and given it to their favorite son without a second thought. I sat in Aunt Patricia's living room, feeling like I had been stabbed in the back. It was not about the money, although $40,000 would have changed my college experience entirely. It was about what the money represented. My grandmother had loved me. She had tried to give me a chance. And my parents had stolen that gift and given it to Derek as if my future did not matter at all. Aunt Patricia asked if I wanted to confront them. I shook my head. It would not change anything, I said. They would make excuses. Derek would play the victim, and I would be the villain for bringing it up. No, I am going to use this as fuel, not as a weapon. From that day forward, I worked with a fire inside me that I had never felt before. During the days, I performed my job well enough to keep getting promoted. But my real work happened at night and on weekends. I began building a software application designed to help small businesses manage their inventory. It was a problem I had noticed again and again, and I believed I could solve it better than anyone else. For 2 years, I poured every spare moment and every spare dollar into this project. I taught myself skills I did not have. I failed and started over more times than I can count. I sacrificed sleep, relationships, and any semblance of a social life. When I was 27, a mid-sized company discovered my application and offered to buy it for $250,000. It was more money than I had ever imagined having. But something told me this was just the beginning. I turned them down and instead accepted an investment that would let me grow the company on my own terms. Over the next 4 years, my business expanded beyond anything I had dreamed. We moved into new markets, developed new products, hired talented people who believed in what we were building. By the time I was 31, the company was valued at over $10 million. My personal stake was worth more than $3 million. But here is the thing. Nobody in my family knew. I never told them. I continued to drive my old Toyota. I lived in a modest apartment. I wore simple clothes. When I visited home, which was rare, I answered questions about work with vague responses about things being fine. My parents never asked follow-up questions. They were never curious enough about my life to dig deeper. The only person who knew the truth was Aunt Patricia. She had watched me build everything from nothing, and she kept my secret because she understood what I was doing. I was not hiding out of shame. I was waiting for what I was not entirely sure, but I knew the moment would come. Meanwhile, Derek was living a very different reality. After college, my parents had given him the money to open a car dealership. He had always loved cars and convinced them this was his calling. Within 2 years, the business was failing. Poor management, bad decisions, too much money spent on flash, and not enough on fundamentals. My parents bailed him out with more money, and Derek told everyone the business was thriving. But it was not thriving. It was sinking. Derek had taken out loans with my parents as co-signers, and he was defaulting on payments. His wife, Heather, had no idea how bad things really were. She walked around wearing jewelry, bought on credit, living in a house with a mortgage they could not afford, believing her husband was a successful businessman. And my parents, desperate to maintain the illusion of their golden child, kept the truth hidden and kept writing checks. The contrast between perception and reality in my family had never been starker. Everyone believed Derek was the success, and I was the afterthought. The truth was exactly the opposite. But I had learned long ago that what people believed mattered less than what was actually true. The summer I turned 32, my parents decided to throw a big barbecue to celebrate their 40th wedding anniversary. They invited the whole family, including extended relatives, neighbors, and of course, their 2 sons. I almost did not go. What was the point of showing up to another event where I would be ignored, while Derek basked in attention? But Aunt Patricia called me the week before. "You should come," she said. There was something in her voice, a weight I did not understand. "Trust me, Joe. You should be there." So I went. I drove my old Toyota to my parents' house and parked down the street so nobody would see how unremarkable my car was. I wore jeans and a plain polo shirt. I brought a salad because my mother had texted me asking for a side dish the first time she had contacted me in months. The backyard was decorated with streamers and balloons. A hired caterer managed the grill while guests mingled with drinks in hand. And there in the center of it all stood Derek. He was holding court, like always, telling stories about his business, dropping hints about expansion plans, accepting congratulations for successes that did not exist. His wife, Heather, stood beside him, showing off a new necklace I knew they could not actually afford. My parents circled nearby, refilling drinks and directing guests toward their favorite son. When I walked into the backyard, my mother gave me a brief wave before turning back to laugh at something Derek said. I found a spot near the fence away from the crowd and watched. This was my family. This was my place in it. After 32 years, nothing had changed. Aunt Patricia appeared beside me, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. She handed me one without a word. We stood together, in comfortable silence, watching the performance unfold. "How much longer?" I asked quietly. She looked at me with an expression I could not read. "Not much longer at all." An hour into the party, my father clinked a fork against his glass to get everyone's attention. The crowd gathered around as he put his arm around my mother and smiled broadly. Thank you all for coming to celebrate 40 years of marriage, he announced. Linda and I are so grateful for our family, our friends, and especially our children. He paused, and I noticed he was looking directly at Derek. We have an announcement to make. As we get older, we have been thinking about the future and what legacy we want to leave behind. So we have decided to transfer ownership of this house to Derek and Heather. The crowd erupted in applause. Derek grinned and embraced my parents, while Heather wiped away tears of joy. I stood frozen, my glass of lemonade suddenly feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. The house. The house where I had grown up. The house where my tiny basement room had been my only refuge. They were giving it to Derek. The property was worth well over $300,000, and they were handing it over like it was nothing. My father continued, his voice thick with pride. Derek has always made us so proud. He is building something special with his business, and we want to support his future. He is the one carrying on our family legacy. My mother nodded enthusiastically. We always knew Derek would be successful. We are so blessed to have him. Not once did they mention my name. Not once did they acknowledge that they had another son standing 20 feet away. I might as well have been invisible. I looked down at my hands and realized they were trembling. Then I heard a voice cut through the applause, a voice I knew well. Before everyone celebrates, Aunt Patricia announced, stepping into the center of the gathering. I think there are some things this family needs to hear. My mother's face tightened. Patricia, this is not the time. No, Linda. My aunt's voice was steady and strong. This is exactly the time. 40 years of marriage and 40 years of lies. I think that is worth discussing, do you not? The crowd went silent. I could feel the tension crackling in the air like electricity before a storm. Aunt Patricia looked around at the gathered faces before settling on my parents. Did you know that when your mother died, she left money specifically for Joe, nearly $40,000 for his education? She put it in her will because she could see how you two treated him. She wanted to make sure he had a chance. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My mother's face went pale. That money, Patricia continued, was supposed to be held for Joe's college. But you spent it, did you not? Paid off Derek's credit cards, bought him that fancy car he crashed 6 months later. You took an inheritance meant for your younger son and gave it to your older one without a second thought. That money was for the family, my mother stammered. No. Patricia's voice was ice. That money was for Joe. I was there when Mom's will was read. I heard her words. She wanted to protect him because she saw what you refused to see. Derek stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. This is ridiculous. My business is doing great. I did not need anyone's help. Patricia turned to him with a look that made him take a step back. Is that so? Then why did the bank call your parents last month about the loan they co-signed, the loan you defaulted on twice? Heather's head snapped toward her husband. What loan? What is she talking about? Derek's face flushed red. I can explain. Can you explain the second mortgage too? Patricia pressed. Or the fact that your dealership has been operating at a loss for 3 years, that every check your parents write just delays the inevitable. The crowd was completely silent now. Heather was staring at Derek like she was seeing him for the first time. My parents stood frozen, their carefully constructed illusion crumbling around them. Then Aunt Patricia turned to me. Joe, I am sorry. I know you wanted to keep this private, but they need to know the truth. She faced the crowd again. While Derek was failing at business and taking handouts, Joe was building something real. He started a software company from nothing. No family money, no support, no help from anyone. And that company is now worth over $10 million. Gasps echoed through the backyard. Joe is a millionaire, Patricia continued. A self-made millionaire who worked 3 jobs through college because his parents refused to help him. Who never complained, never asked for anything, and never stopped working, while his family pretended he did not exist. Derek's mouth hung open. That is impossible. Joe is just... He works at some tech job. I stepped forward, and for the first time all day, every eye turned to me. You want to know why I never told you? My voice was calm, steady, though my heart was pounding. Because you never asked. In 32 years, not once did any of you ask about my dreams, my work, my life. You assumed I was nothing because I was not Derek. I looked at my parents, seeing the shock and confusion on their faces. I worked 3 jobs through college while you paid for Derek to party. I built my company from nothing while you gave him everything he wasted. I did it all without your money, without your support, without your belief in me. I paused, letting the words sink in. And you know what I am grateful. Every time you overlooked me, every time you chose him over me, every time you looked through me like I was not there. It made me stronger. It made me who I am today. My father finally found his voice. Joe, is this true? Why did you never tell us? Would you have listened? I asked. Would you have cared? Or would you have found a way to make it about Derek like you always do? Silence. You can give Derek the house, I said. I do not need it. I do not need anything from you anymore. I stopped needing anything from you a long time ago. I set my glass down on the nearest table. I hope someday you realize that you had 2 sons, not 1. But I'm not going to wait around for that day. I am done waiting. I turned and walked toward the gate. Behind me, I heard Heather's voice, rising in anger, demanding answers from Derek. I heard my mother calling my name. I heard the chaos of secrets finally exposed. Aunt Patricia caught up to me at my car. She took my hand and squeezed it. I am proud of you, she said simply. Thank you, I replied, for everything. I got in my car and drove away without looking back. The drive home that night was strange. I expected to feel angry or vindicated or triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, like I had been carrying a boulder up a mountain for 32 years, and now that I had finally set it down, I did not know what to do with my empty hands. For the next several days, my phone buzzed constantly. My mother called at least a dozen times. My father sent texts that said things like, "We need to talk," and "Please call us." Derek sent nothing at all, probably too busy dealing with the fallout from Heather discovering the truth about their finances. I did not respond to any of them. For the first time in my life, I gave myself permission to put my own needs first. I needed space. I needed time. I needed to process 3 decades of pain without worrying about making anyone else comfortable. I started seeing a therapist, something I probably should have done years earlier. In those sessions, I began untangling the knots that my childhood had tied inside me. I learned that the way my parents treated me was not my fault and was never a reflection of my worth. I learned that I had spent my whole life trying to prove myself to people who were never going to see me clearly. and that I could finally stop. I spent more time with Aunt Patricia. We had dinners together, took walks in the park, talked about everything and nothing. She became more than just an aunt to me. She became the family I had always needed, the proof that blood does not always determine love. Slowly, I began to change the way I lived. I moved out of my modest apartment and bought a penthouse with a view of the city. I donated my old Toyota to charity and bought a car that actually reflected what I had achieved. Not to show off, but because I realized I had been hiding for too long. I deserved to enjoy what I had built. About 4 months after the barbecue, I agreed to meet my mother for coffee. She looked older than I remembered, tired, in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, and she tried to apologize. We made mistakes, she admitted. We did not realize how much we were hurting you. I listened. I nodded. But I noticed she kept using words like mistakes and did not realize instead of taking full responsibility. She was sorry I was hurt, but I was not sure she truly understood why. I appreciate you saying that, I told her. But I need you to understand something. I am not looking for us to go back to the way things were. I am not going to pretend everything is fine. If we have a relationship going forward, it is going to be different. I am going to have boundaries, and you are going to have to respect them. She agreed, though I could tell she did not fully grasp what that meant. We finished our coffee and parted with an awkward hug. It was not a Hollywood reconciliation. There were no tears of joy or promises that everything would be better. It was just two people acknowledging that the past could not be erased, but the future was still unwritten. I heard through Aunt Patricia that Derek and Heather had separated. The house my parents gave them was being sold to pay off debts. Derek had moved back in with my parents, which I am sure was exactly what none of them wanted. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall. His story was his own, shaped by parents who loved him in all the wrong ways. These days, I live a life I once could not have imagined. My company continues to grow, and I have built a team of people who inspire me every day. I have friendships that feel genuine and real, not based on what family I come from or what I can do for someone. I have peace in a way I never knew was possible. Sometimes I stand on my balcony at night, looking out at the city lights stretching to the horizon. My phone will buzz with a message from Aunt Patricia, checking in, making sure I am okay. And I will smile because I am okay, more than okay. For 32 years, I was the invisible son. I lived in the shadows of a brother who shone bright but burned out. I spent my childhood desperate for attention from parents who could not see past their own favoritism. I built a fortune not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. To prove that my worth was never dependent on their recognition. The biggest lesson I learned is this: sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who see you the least. And that is painful. That wound may never fully heal. But you can build a life that is yours, defined by your own choices and your own values. You can find family in unexpected places. You can forgive without forgetting and move forward without leaving yourself behind. I am no longer waiting to be seen. I see myself now, clearly, completely. And honestly, that is all that has ever mattered. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? How did you find your own path, despite the people who doubted you? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is going through the same thing. If this story touched you, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel so you do not miss more stories like this one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And remember, your worth is not determined by who sees it. It is determined by who you choose to become.